everybody. Welcome back to the She Sells, He Sells podcast, where we are here to change the way that you think about sales by teaching you to look at it in a whole new way.
I'm just really excited because if you're tuning in on the tube of YouTube, you will see we have some new branded merch.
Thirsty after that first sentence.
I feel that's going to be great for the audio.
Oh.
We have some She Sells, He Sells mugs. How fun are these?
Yeah, they're pretty sweet. I like them.
Yeah, so we got them for actually a photo shoot we did, and that's really what we're going to talk about today. Not the photo shoot so much, but the lessons from the photo shoot.
Yeah, it's always important to learn lessons from things you do in life, but also it was pretty fun. I mean, it was the first time I'd ever done anything like that, but I think that there's this podcast, I think there are so many things that we have learned through the entire process of it from the beginning when it started, which you'll see established 2022 in the mug. So if you didn't know, now you know. But everything from the beginning of this through the idea of it, through the initial execution to where we are now, to photo shoot, to mugs, to everything, right? So I think it's been such a learning experience for us, and one that has been very valuable in helping me really understand like some very basic, simple ideas. Yeah.
Good analogies for life, good metaphors for life. Yeah. So that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
But before we do.
But first,
a fun fact I'm going to share about my sweet, charming husband, Brian.
That's when I know it's coming in hard. When you set it up that way, I know it's coming hard after that.
No, it's not coming hard. So when we're recording this, the weekend, like upcoming weekend, our daughter, Ava, is in her high school musical. And this year's musical is Little Mermaid. She is Flotsam, going to be the best eel that stage has ever seen. And we've been talking lots about musicals. And I mean, I could really go in so many directions with this, but I'm going to stick with one.
Options.
So Brian and I went to high school together. Fun fact, this football star that ended up, playing D1 college football was also a musical boy.
I was bitten by the bug. That's what people say, right? They've been bitten by the bug.
Yes.
I did. I'm a theater kid.
He actually had a solo song.
Right.
He sang
if you're
all
listening,
by himself.
If you're listening or watching, it is not because I had any real talent. It was probably a minimal pool to choose from. So it's not like I beat out a lot of contenders there, right?
I don't know. Brian,
I also was loud, and we didn't have microphones, so I think that really helped, right? Like not so much you had a good voice; it was just loud. So
would have helped your cause. Yeah,
definitely
Brian
helped.
Was Benny Van Buren.
Yeah.
In Damn Yankees, the coach.
It was fun. We had fun. That was fun. Because it was like if you're familiar with the play Damn Yankees, it's about a baseball team. So you need a lot of male roles, which at that time in high school we did not have a ton. So we ended up that year having a bunch of guys.
The reason they had that musical is because there were so many males that did it.
I don't remember, but there was a lot of guys, and it was a lot of fun.
I remember everything, so you can just fact check.
It was a lot of fun. It was a good time. There are no videos that exist, so I'm sorry to say that. They haven't been digitized for sure, so they're probably on old magnetic tape.
A fun fact on that fun fact is...
You get 2 for 1 today?
2 for 1.
Okay.
When it was Benny Van Buren, I was also in the musical, and my best friend, Leandra, and I were standing in the wings, and he was going for his big song called...
It was big. You got to have heart, kids.
You got to have heart. Can you give us a little?
No.
Please.
I can't. I have a little phlegm.
Okay. That word is so gross. So he was going for his big moment, and speaking of phlegm, he started, "You've got to have," and he was like,
That's an exaggeration.
No, what happened? Something happened in the respiratory system that caused the music to stop and him to take care of some business and then go right back into it. And I remember Leandra and I were behind in the curtain. We're like, we felt so bad for you because we're like, that was really embarrassing. Like, how mortifying that happened to you. You walked off the stage and we were like waiting to see your embarrassed face, and you were like, "Hey guys." Just totally unfazed, like a duck, water rolling.
Well, I think maybe because I was convinced the audience didn't know what to expect. So they didn't know if that was part of it or not. So
you're meant to be a star.
Meant to be.
Anyway.
Meant to be.
Yeah, so, I mean, we did have this recent photo shoot, but you've had your moments in the spotlight, so it should have felt pretty
Yeah, man,
pretty
it was tough.
comfortable to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was the first time I did feel like I was on what not to wear because I got a lot of feedback from you on what I should be picking out and
For the
choosing
photo
to wear,
shoot. Okay,
what I
so
should be wearing. But
let's
let's take a step back.
set the stage. ACORN, which is kind of the parent's company. She sells, he sells.
It's like our Unilever.
Yes.
Right?
ACORN is the brand in which I run all of my coaching and programs. And so we have, one-on-one coaching. You and I do ACORN consulting for people and brands on their, sales processes, sales messaging. I have all of, Amplify and other programs run through ACORN, and then the podcast runs through ACORN. Branch of ACORN that we have flirted with a little bit, I've done some work in it, you've done some work in it, that we both really love, is the speaking and workshop side.
Yeah.
So us coming in and speaking to a group of people, whether that is keynote speaking or workshopping with organizations or companies. And if I look at all of the things we do, besides the podcast, I think it's probably the thing that you and I enjoy the most, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And I think also probably like one of the more natural fits for what we think we're good at and what we really sort of portray best, I think.
Absolutely. I feel like when we're teaching, when we're speaking, and you feel like you're in the zone and you're like, yes, like I'm loving this. It's the interaction with people, especially like in-person workshops and speaking.
Yeah, especially, and even when you say like, where do you want this thing to go 2 years from now, 5 years from now? Where do you want to be
10 years from now?
10 years from now, whatever it is, right? What you name the timeline. Like, I feel like that's the way that we kind of want to lean into that direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
However, we haven't done a lot
but
of it.
yeah, we're not really there yet.
Yeah, we haven't done a lot of it. We haven't focused on marketing that piece of the business for a lot of different reasons. And I will be 100% honest. And just for me, I've had a few opportunities come my way, calls that I've been on to land pretty big keynote speaking opportunities, workshop opportunities that would be really big, and I haven't gotten any of them. And so kind of at the end of last year, we kind of did a lap of like, why aren't these opportunities coming as easily as we want them to? And we realized we're not really positioning ourselves in the right way. If we want these big opportunities to go in and speak to big organizations and big companies and be compensated for that, we need to be legit. We need to look legit. And so it can't be just kind of piecing things together. So a piece of that, beyond, we've spent a lot of time behind the scenes developing what will these key workshops be. Yeah,
the program, so to speak.
What's the menu of services.
Yeah, what are we doing?
Yeah, so we can when we pitch, we are more focused instead of what do you want? And sure, we can fit ourselves in.
Yeah, and I was going to say real quickly, I think that's a key piece to any sales offering is you've got something that you do, right? And one thing that I think we've certainly seen in this process is there's this idea of, okay, I'm looking to hire a person to come in and do a training, do a speaking engagement, do something for my sales team. And I don't really know what it is that I want. So I want to find somebody who tells me, here's what we do.
Yes.
Right? So if you're Chris and I, right, what we don't want to do is say, what do you want us to do?
Yes.
Right? And
which is what we had been
doing. We had been doing, right? And then we sort of built the content, so to speak, and the program, which to me is the hard part. You might disagree, right? But I mean, a lot of that's, the work we capitalized on what you had done so much of already, right? Build it and then sort of start to make it more polished and which is what you're getting toward.
Right. So we first realized like we want to do more of this.
Right.
We're not getting the opportunities organically coming to us. The ones that we do, we're missing for the most part. And so what are the problems here? Let's diagnose the problem. So problem number one is we don't have a clear defined offer.
Right.
We're kind of all over the place. So we've worked a lot on that. Number two is we're not positioning ourselves. We don't look, I don't want to say professional enough in that we don't have the expertise, but we don't have marketing materials that show this is what we do. There's nothing on my website that shows us doing that. We don't have PDFs that we can send to people. And so a part of that is building out a part of the website. And when you have part of a website, you need photos. And so, yeah, we could put stock images, we could put iPhone videos, but we're like, no, we want to step forward in a big way. And so in order to do that, we need to dress the part. We need to fake it till you make it, if you know what I mean.
That's not at all what happened at all, but
Well,
keep going.
that's the way I think of it. But anyway, I digress. So we decided we're going to get some photos taken.
Totally.
So a part of that was, if we want to show us workshopping and speaking in front of people, we either book a gig and hire a photographer to come with us. And as we said, we're not doing the best at booking our gigs, to be 100% honest, and we're not really going after them in the right way.
Or that's also a logistical nightmare, right?
Yes.
Because someone will say it has to be April 15th. Great. Do we have a photographer for April 15th? Where exactly is this event on April 15th? So that seemed like there were too many variables in that equation for us to try to manage.
And we'd have to wait too long.
And we'd have to wait to do it, right?
So instead, we said we are going to act as if.
And we control as much as we can.
Yes, and we're going to do a photo shoot that is set up to look like workshops and keynotes. And so that's what we did. So we hired Desiree Ortman, incredible photographer, friend of ours, and we got about 15 clients and friends to sit in and do these like mock workshops, mock speaking, and have this photo shoot. And so that happened a few days ago as of this recording. And what did you think of the experience?
Loved it. Totally comfortable with every aspect of it. No, it is pretty funny though. I mean, I do feel a level of comfort speaking in front of groups. I'm not the kind of person who gets sort of very intimidated by either a person or a group of people that I'm presenting or talking to, even though I'm not to downplay the stakes of it, right? But I don't generally have that like anxiety level with public speaking and presenting. But it was a little different because some of those people, most of those folks, all of them you knew, most of them I knew, right? There was a little bit of it that felt like kind of a different thing, and you were sort of like dressing up and changing outfits and doing. So it just felt like that is something that I'd never experienced.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. So we started at Desiree's studio. We're actually redoing the podcast cover, which is going to be fun. So we did some photos there. Then we actually came here to get a few shots in front of the wall.
Yeah.
And then we moved on to the workshop and keynote setup. And so we went over to a yoga studio in our town, and we had chairs and a table. And that was the part that was the most exciting, but also the most stressful, because you have people there and you're speaking, but then you're wanting it to look good for photos. And so we did all that. And so we're talking about this experience. I thought this would be a really interesting episode to bring to you because A, the backstory on the photo shoot, but then B, that night I went and sharing clips on my Instagram story, and it looks very glamorous. And it was fun.
Have a big deal.
Well,
no, I'm kidding. I don't want to I'm joking, but it was fun. It was a lot. I mean,
it was a lot.
Yeah.
We had these mugs done so we could use them in the photos. So we could also give them to everybody as a thank you for coming. We had lunch there for people. We had lots of, we had somebody, brother-in-law, Matt Zimmerman, coming do video. There was a lot going on. I had my makeup done. We had wore all these different outfits. So there's a lot of moving pieces. So then you're sharing all these things to social media. And the next day I went back and I watched my stories as one does about 10 times. Fun stories like that are fun to watch back. And I'm watching them back and I'm thinking, this looks legit. Like, this looks professional. This looks really cool. And then I'm thinking, I feel a little bit like an imposter. I feel a little bit like a fraud as I'm watching these back, because it is legit and it is professional and there's a lot of things, but also like we're out on a limb here. Like, we sunk money for all of those things to happen, time, our time and other people's time.
Other people,
to put this thing out there, and we don't know if it's going to work. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, well, we need these jobs. We have these jobs lined up. Like, we don't.
Yeah.
We are putting skin in the game.
It's a new direction for us. Yeah. It's a new direction.
Yeah. We're putting ourselves out there. And really, even by talking about it here, like, we have the potential to fail publicly if we...
I never thought of that.
It's true.
No, I'm kidding.
You're literally
I'm joking.
Standing in front of the group of 15 people and you're like, yeah, we're going to have workshops. And you're like, well, are we? I don't know. I hope we will. I hope people will hire us to come do this. We're talking about it on my Instagram stories. We're talking about it here on the podcast. And we don't know what's going to happen. Like, we're going to move forward. And so that made me think about, I did a recent survey where I asked people to fill it out, like questions about what would you like to see in ACORN programs as I'm refining things. And a big theme, as I was asking, one of the questions I said was, what would make this an easy yes for you? And the biggest theme was, if I could afford it, if it was affordable, if I had the money for it. And yes, having money for things, you do not want to be going into debt. I mean, I'm very risk averse when it comes to finances in the business. Like, I do not like spending a lot of money. So I am not somebody to be like, who cares? Put the money, invest. But the other side
I
of
wouldn't
it,
say you're risk averse as a side note before
you don't think so?
you close. I don't think you're risk averse. I think you generally come at it from the angle of that needs to be taken care of by my cash flow as opposed to my debt.
Yeah, I guess.
So I wouldn't say you're risk averse in investing. I just think the way you look at it is, if I want that, then I need the cash flow to pay for that as opposed to accepting more debt to cover it.
Which probably
Which is
is good and not good.
Yeah, everything has pluses and minuses.
Anyway,
Anyway, sorry to sidetrack.
Like it came together, and this was an important topic to talk about because I think if you're looking at the business, and people tell me all the time, "Oh my gosh, you look like you're killing it. The business is on fire, and everything's so great." And some days it feels like that, and some days it feels exactly the opposite. It feels like I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I don't know where the next set of revenue is coming from. What if I don't have enough money to pay my bills and contribute to our family the way I need to contribute? Like, it's a part of our family income. Like, and so I just want to call it out, because from our own experience and also from many peers that I talk to and people above me, this is a normal feeling. It's part of the game of like, I'm going to step forward and I'm going to sink cash into anything. I'm going to into something. I'm going to sink time into something. And I don't know for sure if that's a good investment. If it's going to come back to me. I'm going to invest in a program. And so it's this idea of like analysis paralysis, not being able to make a decision. What is the right decision? And I know you spent some time looking at some concepts and research around this.
We've talked about this before. I think analysis paralysis, for some reason, my brain has to, like, when I try to say analysis paralysis, I have to think about it first. I don't know why it's funny to me, but analysis paralysis is a real thing. It's just as much a thing in the corporate world as it is in the entrepreneurial space, right? And I think there's a lot of reasons why it exists. And first off, it is a real thing, right? And to try to downplay it and pretend like it's not is just ignoring an issue, right? But I really think this inaction comes from really two buckets, right? And one of them is this analysis paralysis piece, right? And when I look at that and I think of, why do we not make a decision, right? Why do we not take the first step in the journey? Well, I think it's because it seems like a massive journey and we don't know if we're ever going to finish the race, right? So we don't want to shoulder the burden of failure. We don't want to own what may end up not working out exactly perfectly, right? You just mentioned, we don't know that this is going to be a successful business venture, right? What we're trying to do with this new arm of ACORN, we don't know that it's going to be super successful. We don't know that it's not going to be super successful. We just don't know, right?
I would say, like, I believe.
Oh, that's what I was about to say. I totally believe in it, right? And I also know it's what we're interested in.
Yes.
So that's good enough for me, right? So we overcome that piece of it by saying, I really truly believe it's going to be a success, and I really enjoy this, and I want to head in that direction, right?
And I think we will commit to it, and we will make it work.
Right, we'll figure it out, right? But I also think there's other parts of analysis paralysis that come from just having simply too many choices, or continuing to dwell on the idea of, I don't want to make the wrong choice.
Yes.
Right? So too many choices, and I'll give you an example of, I've done this multiple times in my career. I'm sure you have too. Maybe even done it without even knowing, right? Like when we're looking at buying a house is a great example, right? Like you can't get everything you want, right? You just can't. So you start looking at 100 houses. No one can, online, right? Virtually. No one can really go to 100 open houses or 100 showings. It's just ridiculous, right? So you start to pare that down, right? And then you say, well, we're going to go on this weekend to open houses. And you start to kind of backward plan yourself into it and put yourself on a schedule. That to me is the biggest way to get over this too many choices thing, right? Start to kind of wind it down and say, okay, I'm going to make a decision by April 30th, right? And if I'm going to make a decision by April 30th, I need to be down to 3 main choices by April 15th. And I'm just using dates, just throwing them out there, right? So I'm trying to whittle away and keep myself on a schedule. So I'm forcing myself to kind of weed out a bunch of that trash. Because I think if we look at it objectively and we take a step back for a minute, 80% of the choices that we think are legitimate choices don't fit our needs at all, right? They really don't. And that's that's not really our example for the photo shoot, but when you're looking at all the things you need to invest in as a business owner and what's going to drive revenue and what's important, many of those choices aren't really going to do that, right? And if you really sit down and think about it, you can weed out, I think, the majority of them on the front end, right? So that's, I think, the first thing about that analysis paralysis piece. The second thing is human nature, and I think not for everyone, but for many of us, we tend to dwell on, well, what if I make the wrong decision?
Yes.
How many times have you asked yourself, what if I make the right decision? I don't really ask myself that a lot. And I think as business people, we talk about fear of failure versus the excitement of winning and what's what. And there's a whole, I'm sure, massive brain science that goes into those two options. But the human nature for me is to think about the things that could go wrong, right?
Yeah, it's negative bias. So our brains are wired to look for danger.
Avoid danger, right? And we kind of apply the same thing here. And I would just say, and I don't know if there's a way to get over that, right? But I mean, when we thought about this and we think like, what if we invest all this time and money and energy and effort and ask friends to do a lot of the same, invest their time and energy into something that doesn't end up working out in 12 months, right? Every time I felt like I had a thought like that, what I told myself immediately after was, okay, well, what if we don't invest this right now? Then I can for sure guarantee you that 6 months from now, we will still probably have a really hard time booking clients, right? And just try to flip the script a little bit and think through, like, if I don't do this, then what happens, right? Which kind of plays into my other aspect here. And this is like my favorite thing in the world. And I've talked about this a lot, this endowment effect. This is the idea that we overvalue what we have versus what we don't, right? And it's a real economic principle. And it's one of the most interesting things to me in all of like behavioral economics, this idea that we place a higher value on the things we own already than somebody else does for what they want to buy from us, right? So our willingness to accept a price point is generally far higher than someone else's willingness to pay a price point, right? And the simplest example I can give you, let's say you got a 15-year-old used car sitting in your driveway, nobody uses anymore, and you think, boy, this has been such a reliable car for me. And I remember when we took this car all the way to Florida, and we brought our first kid home from the hospital in this car, and these are a lot of miles, but they're highway miles. And I've taken really, you know what I mean? Like you hear that kind of stuff, and you think that car's worth $10,000, right? Because that's what you value it at, because you have it, you own it, it's in your driveway. I may come over and say, I'll give you $5 for it, right? And you're offended, right? Immediately you think, oh my God, how could you possibly look how good shape this? Yeah, it's got some nicks and bruises and dings and all that kind of stuff. And I hit a curb a while back, but other than that, it's in great shape, right? Because we are conditioned to believe what we own is worth more than what somebody else is willing to pay for it, right? And I think that applies not only to products, but also to status quo, right? We overvalue the idea of not having to make a decision today because we think, the house isn't burning down. I don't have to make a decision today. I can punt on that till next week, next month, next year, or when I have a higher revenue flow or whatever it might be, and that's going to be okay, right? We overvalue the status quo and undervalue the problem with inactivity, I guess. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. It's the idea of, if we're talking about it in terms of investing in a program or a skill, so like, as an entrepreneur, there's a million programs you can invest in, courses, coaches, all these things. And something will come your way and you'll look at it and it's maybe $3,000 and you're like, I could do it, but cash is a little, like, business isn't exactly where I want it to be right now. So, you know what, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait till the next round when this is open again, and I'll do it then, because I'll definitely make more money between now and then. I can save it. And as someone that's on the receiving end of a lot of those conversations, like as the person that's selling the course or the program and people that tell me I'm going to get it next round, I'll do it next round. I don't have a percentage, but I would go 80-90% of the people never do it. Yeah. They never do it. And a part of that, like as the salesperson, I realize like that's why you have to capitalize when someone's excitement is high, and you do have to really guide and sell to get them to make a decision and jump in if you feel like they really want to do it right now, because they aren't going to come. They're not going to come the next round. Many of them, most people will not do it the next round because why? Life happens. money gets even more scarce, because if you know I need to invest to grow and I'm not happy with the way things are now, unless you're making a move, you're probably going to be more unhappy in 6 months and even more unhappy in a year. And a lot of times when I go back, I've been doing ACORN now 4 years. I have a whole email folder of prospects, people that have emailed me or notes. I go back to some of them from 2 years ago. They're out of business. They don't own their business anymore. They've stopped because of that idea of like, I can't make a move. I've got to wait. And I know I hate talking about money in this way, because I also know things are expensive, and I don't want to ever say to somebody, just invest and go into debt. Like, that is not my vibe at all. However, I know the times where I've seen the most explosive growth in my business is when I usually have forked over cash that has made me feel pretty uncomfortable, because I know I got skin in the game, and I am going to I'm going to hustle my ass off to make sure that money was a good investment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, big difference for me, right? In my sales life outside of ACORN, I'm selling to an entity, right? Not a person, right? I'm not asking a person to pay me $1,000 out of their pocket, right? I'm asking a corporation, a company, to pay me a couple $1 million, right? That doesn't come from someone's bank account. You know what I mean? So there's a big difference for me. And I think that's part of it as an entrepreneur, right? So you have this understanding, and even if it's not verbalized, right? It's this sort of like subconscious understanding that you're asking someone to pay you something from their bank account, right? From their checking account, from their debit card, right? And I don't know, maybe that's part of it. But then
I think this is where small business owners, where solopreneurs go wrong.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
That's what I'm getting to.
Because it shouldn't be from your personal bank account.
That's what I'm saying. Like you need to take the mindset of like, this is still a business entity, right?
Yes.
And they're investing in the future earnings of the business, right?
Yes.
So it's that like same idea of, well, what if I make a wrong decision? What if I don't make the right decision, right? Or what if I'm just turn it around? And I guess I'm kind of rambling here, and I'm not saying the right thing. I don't know if it's coming across the right way, but like, don't look at it that way. Don't look at it like you're asking a person to pay you something. You're asking somebody to invest in the long-term health and growth of their business or company.
Yeah. I want to take it from the buyer perspective for a minute. So if you are a solopreneur, a small business owner, and there's a program you want to do, and let's just use this $3,000 number because I already threw it out there. There's a program that's $3,000. You don't want to be looking at your family finances and your family bank account and being like, do we have $3,000 for me to spend? You want to be looking at it from your business account. And maybe you don't have a business account yet. And maybe you want to finance your business account with your family finances. You can do that however you want to make it work. Maybe you take a small business loan. Maybe you open a small business credit card. When you start a business, you will be in debt. Like the money has to come from somewhere. You're starting at zero. And in order to get a business moving, money has to go in. Even if it's an online business, like you have to invest in your own learning, you have to invest in a platform, like money comes from somewhere. So either your family invests in the business, or you take out a loan, or you have a credit card. Like the money has to come from somewhere. So you have to think of it as your own business account. When I started ACORN, $10,000 for me to invest in my own learning off the bat. That was 4 years ago. It'd be worth more now.
Yep, sure.
That was so scary. I literally felt sick to my stomach for like a month. Because it felt like it was investing in me. But what you kept telling me is, no, you're starting a business. Like we're starting a business. This is actually a pretty low overhead to start a business.
100%. If we were opening a storefront, we would spend far more than $10,000 in inventory. Just as an example, right? And then I think the other thing that I remember specifically talking about this, is there anything that you're going to learn in that course that you couldn't figure out yourself over time? Maybe not, right? I don't know. I didn't take the course you did. I would say maybe not. The problem is it might take you 18 months to figure that out, right?
Probably longer.
Just as an example, right? And what are you giving up in that 18-month span that you could be sprinting towards the finish line if you got accomplished in the next 30 days?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that's a perfect example. That course, was the course worth $10,000? Like, was that coaching program everything? Like, who's to say? Was I overly impressed by it? Not really. Was I underly impressed by it? No. It was what it was. And really, like when you fork over that cash, you don't really have time to think, like, is it worth it or not? It is. There, I have skin in the game, and I'm going to make the most of it. And so here is a whole bunch of knowledge that is out in the world for free. I could find it on podcasts, I could find it on YouTube, but not in a sequential order, not right here at my fingertips.
Not packaged for me.
Not packaged up. And I'm paying for the package. I'm paying for the speed. I am paying for, I'm going to follow this, and I know within 3 months, I am moving and making money.
Right.
And in 2 months, I started making money. I would say within 4 months, that was paid back. And it wasn't because of the program. It was because I had skin in the game and decided I'm going to make money now.
That's the endowment effect, right? You have now what you own, right? That skin in the game thing is now I own something, so I overvalue it, so I've got to make my money.
Which is exactly what we're doing with this photo.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Like, okay, well, we have people watching us. We're talking about it. We put money into the photo shoot. We did all these things. Like, we gotta make good on what we just did. And so I think the bottom line is not, and you haven't said it yet, and I haven't said it yet, but we've been dancing around it. Really, two like mantras. My most favorite mantra of like adage, quote, whatever. It's not fake until you make it.
I know.
I'm
waiting.
It's not. It's ready is a decision, not a feeling. Okay. So it's this idea of I'm going to wait till I'm ready. Like, I'm going to wait till things feel ready. You will never be ready. Ready is a decision. I decide. Now's the time. And I am going to commit. Decide means literally, if you look at like the DECIDE side means kill, DE means to take away. You're killing off decisions. You're killing off options. You're making one choice and you're going forward. So ready is a decision, not a feeling. And then something else I heard, actually I think it was a guest that was on, I forget her name, and I don't know if it's her original thought or not, but it was Rich Roll podcast, which is a great podcast to listen to. This woman that said, it's not about making the right decision. It's about making the decision right. And so something I'll tell our kids, something I tell my clients, like the only bad decision is no decision. The only bad decision is being like, I'll wait, I'll see. It's this like, let me see how it works. Let me just give it time. I hate it. I hate to think it. I hate to hear it. You're killing your progress. You're killing your potential. The only bad decision is no decision. So decide. If you say, I'm going to invest in this program, make the program right. I've been in great programs. I've been in bad programs. Every single one has helped me grow because I've decided I'm not going to let that be in vain. I'm not going to let that money mean nothing. I'm not going to let that time mean nothing. I'm going to grow from this.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, it is interesting because I feel like one thing that I've talked a lot about in my career is as an ex-military Army officer, right? And I was an Army officer at the start of my professional career. I think folks who have not been in the military oftentimes think that they associate military decision making with you're evaluating exhaustively every potential option and going into minute detail about all the different plans, and that to some degree is true on the high level when you have armies of folks working on things, but at the unit level, that's just not the case, right? We live by the mantra of imperfect action trumps perfect inaction every single day, twice on Sundays, right? Like, and that's one of the biggest misnomers about the military is you evaluate everything so exhaustively, and you just can't. You don't have the time. You don't have just the luxury of sitting around and doing nothing, right? You've got to make a decision, make the best of that decision, move forward, rely on your training, trust in who you are, trust in the people around you, right? And get after it, right? Because that's what I think is like one of the biggest takeaways I've learned from the leadership training I had in the military and in the Army was this idea that you can make a lot of things much better just by leading and pushing through and driving and forcing yourself to work, which is what you're saying, right? Like maybe it's not the best decision, maybe it wasn't ideal, right? But if I execute that really aggressively, I'm going to make it turn out to be pretty good experience.
And also, who knows? When you look back and you're like, oh, I made the wrong decision. Is it really?
Yeah.
Because that's the path you took. You have no idea what that other one was. And you can look back and think, well, yes, that would have been better because X, Y, and Z, but you didn't walk that path. So you actually have no idea. Yeah. It could have gone catastrophically wrong.
Yeah.
And so it's really about just committing and doing the best with what you have.
Yeah.
And those are the people that succeed in life,
Yeah.
that succeed in business. They succeed in life. The wishy-washy, I'm not sure, let me decide, let me mull it over. Oh, it's
I would
just
love
you're
it.
wasting
Yeah.
time, and time is precious in life and in business and everything. You just got to commit and you got to move.
If I ever become an academic, which is may happen, I don't know.
Professor
I'm thinking about
Demschwa?
I'm thinking about becoming a professional student. I
Student
really
of what?
I don't know. But really, honestly, the thing that's most interesting to me, if you're talking about studies and things, and that's what I was kind of getting at, is like this, like just getting into the details of indecision, right? Like that's so interesting to me as a concept. And I've met so many people that are really bright, talented people that are so indecisive, right? And I would just love to know, like, to start peeling away the onion and the layers of the onion to figure out exactly how did we get to that point, right? Because I find it so fascinating why some people can make decisions quickly, make the best decision they can in a given amount of time. I don't mean haphazardly, right? And then other folks sort of, kind of mull things over and punt back and forth, and 30 days go by, 60 days go by, and then you're having the same conversation. I mean, I'm so interested in that as a concept, and I'm sure there's so much I could find if just looking through and Googling it, but that's really interesting to me. Really interesting idea.
How would you rate us as like a couple on decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we're on the opposite side of that spectrum. Sometimes probably we've made some rash decisions that haven't worked out great.
That's what I'm thinking too.
But I don't think we're not throwing caution to the wind, people.
No.
We haven't bungee jumped yet, if that's what you're asking.
I do think we make decisions pretty quickly.
Yeah, but I think we also you talk about that gut feeling thing, that gut instinct, and to me, again, it's like I can take a B+ and make it into an A much easier than I can trying to create an A over the next 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's backfired on us a little bit.
Sometimes, for sure.
There's things where you're like,
that was a mistake. Yeah.
But I think there's been way more upside.
But I also remember a long time ago, somebody asked me in an interview when I was interviewing for a job, and they said, "What do I regret? What decisions do I regret?" And I was like, to be honest with you, none.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and the guy was like, "What?" And I said, "I'm not saying I've never made bad decisions. I've made my fair share just like anybody else, but I don't regret it because it's made me who I am today. And it was all a learning experience. If I regret it, how do I pick one that was the wrong decision?
Because you just don't know what domino.
Yeah, right. So I mean, I thought it was a bad question. If you're listening, that was a terrible question.
Don't ask.
But no, I'm just I agree. We're not batting 1,000 on decisions, right? But I'm still alive, right?
What do you think I don't want to say worst decision, but when you think of family couple, what's one that you're like, I might want to take that one back? Or when I look back, I'm like, I tell myself, maybe don't do that. You know what I think of? Is buying our
first house. That's what comes to my mind too. Yeah.
Yeah. So we bought our first house in a weekend. That
was probably a little quick. Looking back, if our kids ask us, should I buy a house in a week? Excuse me, should I buy a house in a weekend? I'll probably tell them no.
And you know what? Kudos to our parents because
they didn't. Yeah, they just were like,
they never I feel like both of our parents are so good about never being like, "What did you guys do? That was a dumb decision." They're just like, "Okay, well, we'll try to help you through it." You were in the Army. We were getting out of the Army, living in Oklahoma, moved to Connecticut.
I was convinced that you build equity, right? You build equity by investing in a home. Sweat equity, right? You improve a product, turn it out to be more valuable when you sell it a couple of years later than what you purchased it at.
We looked at houses for more than just one weekend, though, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, it was the internet was invented still, so we did.
But I remember we had two
trips, maybe. I don't know.
I don't know, but it was pretty quick.
But I was fully invested in the idea that
we're going to buy a house. No, not renting.
Yeah.
We've been renting for 5 years of our marriage. We're going to buy.
We're going to build equity in purchase, which is
cute. But then later we learned it looked it was a really pretty street.
Loved it.
We learned
and it wasn't an ideal place. Yeah.
School district, and we didn't have kids, and we were like, it doesn't matter. We didn't have kids. We really think about resale.
Yeah.
We're like, we won't be living here by the time we have kids in school, which we weren't, but we had to sell.
Someone else might be. Yeah.
And then there were lots of things that need to be improved in the house, and and we ended up losing $40,000 on that house.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
Yeah, because So, but also, again, I wouldn't take it back necessarily, but when I look back, I'm like, lesson learned.
Yeah.
When it comes to buying real estate take a little bit more time, which we did in our
subsequently.
future things. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the other thing, right? I mean, I think my bottom line is here, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it right all the time.
No.
Right. So give yourself the freedom to let go of the idea that you have to get it perfect every time.
And you'll
right?
never know if you're going to get it right. You just have to commit.
You don't know. Right.
Yeah.
And then that's, I think, the first thing, which is almost like a little bit of like a weight off your shoulders, to be honest, right? To not feel like you have to nail this and make it perfect. And then, the second thing is like set yourself small goals, backward plan, put yourself on a little bit of a decision-making process here and understand that like you've got to commit to a deadline, right? We can't continue to delay this thing indefinitely.
Yeah. I think the deadline thing is
it's really important. Yeah.
Powerful thing. Where I am right now, not in this workshop podcast part of the business, but in the program part of the business, I've really been like, how am I going to, with Amplify the signature program, like I need to reconfigure it. And I've just been dragging my feet because I don't really have it. I didn't really create a deadline for myself.
Yep.
And finally I got sick of my own BS and I was like, okay, talk to Renee, who's like my right-hand woman. Okay, this is the day we're getting this out there. And I need to figure it out because without a deadline, I will continue dragging my feet.
Totally. But that's the entrepreneurial world, right? Like if you're my sales manager and you say, hey, I need your, quarterly business plan by Friday, right? Then I damn sure better have my quarterly business plan to you by Friday because you put that deadline on me, right? If I'm an entrepreneur and I don't have a quote unquote boss, it's up to me to do that for myself,
And that's also one of the weakest spots, I think, for many solopreneurs.
Yeah.
It is like, well, I'll get to it.
Holding your own feet to the fire.
You've got to learn to hold your own feet to the fire. And honestly, for me, like, I think I don't like to be publicly humiliated. Like I don't. I mean, who does?
I love it. I was about to say.
No, I mean,
gosh, it's one of my top 5 favorite things.
Is important to me, and not what.
Yeah, I'd say it's also unfortunately very important to me. Like
that's why we're sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder.
Like I don't need to rent some dumb piece of equipment to go dig a hole.
And that's why you ended up not being able to move for 6 weeks. But the idea of like. It does motivate me to think other people are watching and I don't want to fail. And whether that's probably not healthy, but and other people aren't watching. Like you can listen to this whole podcast and you're going to forget about the photo shoot. Like, but the idea that like I put it out there and I said, I'm doing this thing and I threw it out to other people who heard that. And so I better follow through. That motivates me. And so it might not motivate everybody, but I think you have to figure out what does motivate you and find a way to hold your feet to the fire. So at the end of the day, ready is a decision, not a feeling. Any decision or the only bad decision is no decision. And you just make the decision right. Like it's not about picking the right thing. It's about making the decision right.
Amen.
Boom, boom, boom.
Get some mugs.
Available. Not in any store.
Right.
We'll see.
And what is it? Find retailers near you. Yeah.
Basement closet. Yeah. Your mom said, "Are you guys going to sell them?" I'm like, "That's a decision I'm going to say no to because I would definitely."
They're like, "Are you going to buy them?" Because if so, then yes.
How much will you pay us for them? Yeah. So we'll figure out a way to maybe we'll do a fun giveaway with these. I think that could be fun.
I mean, they're pretty slick. I'm not going to lie.
They're slick. And this was another thing. I mean, we got branded merch now. There's no turning back.
That's right.
There's no turning back.
That's right.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. Again, we're always so grateful for your shares of the podcast. Really, that is the biggest way you can help us out. If you are enjoying the content, sharing this episode with somebody that
tell a friend.
Enjoy it too.
Tell a friend. Hey,
tell a friend.
Tell a friend. Be like, hey, you need some help, friend. Here's what you should listen to, friend. No, I'm kidding. Don't be aggressive about it, but tell them anyway.
Be nice. All right. We'll be back with you next week.